Hey now, cats, we're back again this week on the Balls from Ellwood show. And with me, I have not one, but I have two very special guests from the future classic Sweet Meats, distributed by everyone's favorite Troma Entertainment. I have with me today writer and director Ricky Glore and executive producer Riley Bartolomeo, and we're going to talk all about that. But before we get into that, I just seen the film. I want to talk about that, and I absolutely loved it, man. I have to say, I had such a fun time watching this, and it really did give me that trauma vibe, like which I think is really important. And I really, but I'll get into that later. What I really wanted to kind of do first is I wanted to actually talk about you guys and actually learn a little bit about you guys before we get into that. So, like, what was you guys? Where are you guys from? Like, what were you like growing up?
Oh, that's a big question. And you said you had multiple questions. I'll let Riley, I'll gauge how long I answer, what Cliff Notes version as long-winded as I am able to give. So Riley, you go right ahead.
Oh, you sure? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I'll give you the shorter version compared to my shrink. But so, so I'm originally from Connecticut, and I grew up watching lots of PBS and Turner Classic Movies, which kind of got me with the bug. And my grandfather happened to be a local TV host for actually a bowling TV show that used to play in the Northeast. And so he was always into kind of TV and film. And so the bug kind of continued in. And then I went to film school at Wagner College in New York City, originally documentary, but somehow ended up in the horror world. Uh, Originally producing kind of off Broadway stuff and then more so film and TV news at the moment. But that's kind of what brought me here. And I will say what brought me to Sweet Meats was however the universe had it out. I was reading Oliver Stone's book, Chasing the Light, and he happened to mention Lloyd Kaufman within the book, which then led to me suddenly seeing and learning about Sweetmeats and getting involved. And Ricky is, I will say to anyone listening to this, one of the best people to ever work with. And I highly recommend everyone works with him, give him your money and distribute him.
Give him your money. That's a bumper. Like that's a Lloyd Kaufman, I think, has that copyrighted.
Hey, if I'm not mistaken,
Give your.
didn't didn't Lloyd give Oliver Stone his first break in a movie?
Yes, in what is it, Sweet Cookies or some
Oh, was it Sugar
Oh my.
Cookie?
Sugar
Or
Cookies?
was
Yeah.
that Battle of Love's Return? It was in one of them early movies I know, but man, that's
All
a
I
good.
know is so Riley and I never knew the gestation of the creation evolution of how he got connected to Sweetmeats, except for when we connected via the crowdfunding, and just said, I would like to be an executive producer, but I want to be more than just somebody who executive produces just in credit, just to have something listed on IMDb. To Riley's credit is that we started talking about things. We started talking about the movie, started but talking about what he could do for the movie, any ways that he could. I mean, already we had a test screening of Sweetmeats at Troma Dance this past year in New York City, and Nick Hyance, my filmmaking partner and cinematographer, uh, co-founder of NKY Films, we went up and we're both from the Northern Kentucky area. We're not complete babes, pig in the city kind of mentality. I lived in Chicago for 9 years, and Nick is pretty well traveled as well. But it is anything trauma involved. It is a step outside of not even comfort zone, but like normality. I don't know. It's a different world. And Riley was so gracious enough to come to that, and that's when we met him for the first time. But besides that, to connect to what you guys are talking about with Oliver Stone, is that we've traded back and forth. Different movies we've watched, different classic movies that influence kind of what we want to do with, or what I want to do with film now, or what makes us, trading stories about what you've watched and what you like is also kind of that shorthand of seeing if someone's cool, right? Like dumb people do it with bumper stickers, smart people do it with films. I know that's like a way of blowing myself, but like uh you guys mentioned the Oliver Stone thing. You and Riley and I, we've gone to like way more like classic film, more like silver screen. But have you guys seen, is it Oliver Stone's second feature film with Hervé
Oh,
Villechaize?
Seizure. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What a a movie I never have to see again, but I'm so glad I've seen it once.
Shot 2 weeks in upstate New York.
Makes you know what? You could see it. Like when people say about Sweetmeats, how we shot it in 8 days of principal photography, they're just like, no. And I'm just like, yeah, I will put myself above that Oliver Stone film and be like, look, their movie looks like it was shot like in a 3 day house rental.
So you're telling me Sweet Meats was shot in 8 days?
Yeah, principal photography is 8 days. The majority of the film with we didn't do any reshoots. We did a couple pickups. The demon scar death scene and performance at Jason's Woods up in Pennsylvania was shot after principal photography, and the wraparounds. So the death at the opening death with the guts at the beginning with Avi Affy hanging there, which that was a carryover from our initial script open house that we were unable to get the crowdfunding for, which is why we pivoted to Sweetmeats. Sweetmeats gives all of its two sources of influence for Sweetmeats. One, I really loved what Ty West did with X to Pearl. I actually prefer Pearl more than X, but I really like him having this. Not to say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films being from the early part of the 70s to where they are now, they've explored that, but it's been over 50 years they've had to do that. But what he did with three films in a contemporary audience and mindset, I think ushered in a big part of how we view horror film, or what is quote unquote described as elevated horror, which I feel like was more in the zeitgeist with like Jordan Peele. But yeah, now I'm just chasing rabbits. Where were we? Where were we in
Actually, I just
this
wanted to tell you
discussion?
real quick. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Ty West fan. I've loved him since The Roost.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
I absolutely. But actually, it's that's actually a really nice transition into my next question for you guys.
Yeah, go to the next. Yeah, Sweetmeats. It was the history of Mike Flincham, who was a childhood friend of mine and a producer and actor in the film. He plays hardware store Bob, who lost his eye and all your friends are dead. He is Bob Sweet the third and the wraparounds. His grandfather is Bobby Mackey, where we shot at Bobby Mackey's country music legend. So my love of From X to Pearl. When we were talking, Sweetmeats exist in open house, which took place in present time. The restaurant and their lineage existed, but in the peripherals. So then, when open house couldn't happen, we were trying to think of a much cheaper movie to make, which is so funny the budget we ended up getting and the things we got to be able to do. We were like, okay, well, what would that story be? And Mike and I literally, like, I was like, I think it's this. It's basically this show I did in Chicago called Fleetwood Macbeth, but we could repurpose that, and where that took place in the 70s at a radio station to the music of Macbeth, or to the music of Fleetwood Mac with the story of Macbeth. I was like, I think I could just repurpose that script in a lot of different ways with South exploitation films and kind of make this drive-in movie feel. And again, there was no connection to Troma at the time when we so quickly pivoted projects to what we did. So it was partly that the X to Pearl connection, and also using Mike's like actual family history of his grandfather being Bobby Mackey, who's not only known for being a country music legend, he's also known for having a honky tonk haunted bar. If you didn't know that, yo, you got some Googling to do. You got some
Oh
searching to
man,
do.
yeah, I totally have to check it out.
All the basement scenes, all the death scenes of the basements in Nick's restaurant, that
Yeah,
was famed haunted Bobby Mackey's.
he shot in a real haunted place.
Real haunted place. Yes.
Did you see
So much.
anything? Did you see anything that would, contribute to that fact while you were filming, or
Except for the cracks in the foundation that were being held together by duct tape, and which is why that place has now since been demolished and will be rebuilt over that area. I did not see anything of any supernatural substantiation.
well, let me ask you this. I mean, judging, from seeing Sweetmeats, I mean, obviously you cats are horror fans. Let me ask you, I ask all my guests, when did your love of horror start? Like, as I like to call it, the chasing the dragon moment, like that time, it's before, it's after you see something and it impacts you so much that you end up becoming a fan the rest of your life. Do both of you have like a chasing the dragon moment, and what was what you saw that made you that way?
I'll quickly say, before Riley, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I was sitting at the foot of my parents' bed. They had a VCR top loader. Actually, they had two of them because that's how we had our movies. Was my dad would put five movies on a VHS, ranging from Mountaintop Massacre to like Care Bears the movie. Like, and you'd have to fast forward through some heinous shit to get through like to the kids movie. Um, but my parents thought I was asleep at the foot of their bed in 1988. I was 3 years old, and those are some of my first memories is seeing the blue hue of night in the alley scenes when Tina's being chased down the alley in A Nightmare on Elm Street. From then on, I was an Elm Street fan. From now until death, whatever they do with it, I'm just like, yep, that series. I know some people feel that way about Friday the 13th. Mine's Elm Street. Riley, what is with all of us? I feel like yours should be more classic. It should be like the original Nosferatu, or like being an actual film student. What is your favorite horror, and what is your favorite like artistic horror, or that you consider like an artistic horror?
I would say I'll break it down into two answers, I think. One would be so growing up, I think it was on USA was showing it, I believe at the time. And it was the Freddy versus Jason movie that was on. Or yeah, Freddy versus Jason thing. Uh and it was like Robert Englund was just phenomenal.
Yeah,
Uh and then I would say the second answer to that in terms of like real horror, in terms of
yeah,
non-monster stuff,
yeah.
Ingmar Bergman's Shame,
Hmm.
which is
I knew you'd have like a Virgin
which
Springs
is
or
oh God,
something.
which
Yeah.
highly recommend any of your listeners who have not watched it. It's just pure what happens when you have an invading force take over this desolate island of people and the horrors of war. It's the first time you see it, you will never want to see it again because it
Hmm.
just hits so well on every heartstring, but absolutely phenomenal. And then I would even say too, Herschel Gordon Lewis really came to love Blood Feast, and even William Griffey's uh, Stingray movie, which the title's escaping me at the moment, but just I like to say, and Ricky, I've used this quote with before, of my tastes go everywhere from the Criterion Closet to the Severn Cellar and everything above and below. Uh, but no, it's yeah, it's horror no matter whether it's with the makeup or effects or the true horrors of
Yeah.
war or even that wonderful Scorsese produced movie on Netflix with Vanessa Kirby. I think it's Uncommon Woman or something like
Hmm.
that. Just the depths of where you go within the genre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Promising Young Woman, I think is I would say was one of the most horrific like movies that caused so many visceral reactions from me recently, which it's like, okay, at the end of the movie, like if you have to classify it, like what would it be? And what's great about a movie like that is with Promising Young Woman is that, and now I think people have felt more way with that way with Saltburn, but I think that that movie encompassed what horror does best, which is it makes you laugh, it catches you off guard, it makes you relate to it, it makes you fearful, like just all of those different things. Like when anybody has ever asked me, like, well, okay, if you do comedy horror, like what would you do if you just want to make a horror movie? As if like comedy horror is like on a different rung, which I'm like, yeah, all right, it's a different branch on the tree or whatever. It's a subgenre, but like, man, I've sat there and seen people watch our two movies, All Your Friends Are Dead and Sweet Meats, and they'll flinch at certain scenes, and I'm like, great, because we just had you laughing. Like, so when anybody's like, well, if you'd made a real horror movie, like, what would it be? I'm like, I don't know. I don't, there's nothing. I'm just like, ooh, and this is gonna be spooky. Like, y'all gonna be real scared. Like, I don't have anything that, like that would in my mind be like the scariest thing to me is like what a lot of short films do, like gimmicks, like a setup and then like the punchline is an idea, and this is just wasting an idea, but this is as scary as it could be as a parent. If like you had a babysitter come over and they're like, all right, you watch your baby and here's the monitor, they're already asleep, you're good, we'll see you in 3 hours, and then one night that babysitter who's been babysitting for like 6 months realizes there is no baby upstairs, and that's just like a video feed or something, and like all of upstairs is empty. There's actually no furniture beyond like the room that she just goes to, like something like that. And I don't even know what the rest of that would be, because that to me is like a short film when you're doing something like quote unquote scary. It's more to me, I think, what Riley said of like, what is the broad definition of horror? I mean, you watch Alfred Hitchcock's first film, which is silent, and people want to say Psycho, but people forget that he was the master of suspense and tension. Like so many of his other movies would make your stomach, and I can't even think of the one where it's the question and the reveal at the end of if the uncle is a serial killer that they're reporting about in New York City. What's the title of that, Riley?
That
Do you know?
Frenzy? No, no.
No, 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 no. Frenzies is second to last, or Hitchcock could finally show some booby.
That Lodger or Blackmail? No.
Oh, no, no.
That's not
Oh my
rope, is
God.
it?
No, 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 no. That rope is the his dramatic telling of the Lieber and Loeb or something, the real guys who were probably gay and thought they're like, oh, we'd love to kill somebody, and we took a college class and we can figure out how to do it.
The real
Uh,
people went to Yale in that one.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Uh, but so anyway, but yeah, you go back and watch like Alfred Hitchcock's first film, which is a silent film, and it's a thriller and it's a mystery, like who done it, kind of like a Jack the Ripper kind of character, and there's a wrongfully accused man in it, which he's known to do from time after time. But just even that, you're just like, holy shit, like this is scary. I mean, I joked before about Nosferatu. There's a reason why we keep on every 25 years or 20 years, keep on ripping off that image, that visual, is because it's nightmare fuel of what it is. Not like we don't even you don't even have to up the ante of that. Like that is terrifying to look at that. Even maybe even more so now because it feels even so like even more disconnected from our reality or something weird, and the frame rate's off, or like watch something like The Golem, and I think that stuff we more than answered uh your horror question.
Well, I
And
actually
it's
think you
fun
brought
because
up a good point earlier about horror and comedy. I mean, I think a lot of the time, I mean, people, I don't know, we're probably the snobbiest community there is because if it's not too, if it's not scary enough, it's like, oh, or if you put comedy in it at all, it's like, oh, we know it's too funny, it's not scary. But like, I always feel like, I mean, if you look at an anthology movie like Creepshow, I think that's a good example of how scary is still really scary, but funny kind of offsets it and makes it less dour when there is those little funny parts to kind of let the audience breathe. So I
And
always,
I think we think some things are funny, and then the fear factor of them creep up later. So like Geordie, is it with The Curious Case of Geordie?
pretty
I can't
literal.
think. Yeah, the Stephen King one where he becomes a human chia pet. We laugh at that, and it's like it's really funny, and he's acting, obviously he's overacting, which is perfect for it. Tonally, it's George Romero is also fantastic with balance. I think with balancing satirical humor, slapstick humor. Uh, oh my gosh, what's Martin is a
Well, that's one of
fantastically
my favorite vampire movies of all time.
And it's indie as hell. It is funny. The humor is very dark. So I think George Romero doesn't get enough credit for
Dude, you don't
how
have to
funny.
explain it to me, dude. I got married in the Night of the Living Dead cemetery.
I love that that is like people have died and have been buried there and will continue to get buried, but like it is basically just a real life movie set, like Quick Stop,
It
like
is.
in New Jersey. Like
It's
I
funny though,
love.
because like they had to actually go and they had to have a board, and they actually had to vote on whether we were allowed or not, and it took them like a month to get back to us.
You're
I
like
had,
worth it. This is the only time
but
bureaucracy
the
has
I feel
worked
funniest
like
for
that's
part
a
me.
about it
Parks and
is,
Rec episode right there.
Yes, yes. That is a
but
Parks and Rec
the best part
episode.
about those, as the wedding's going on, we had to get approved by board, but there's, you know, 20, 30 people coming, pulling up just to see it from all over the
Taking
world as it's
video,
going
yeah.
on. So I
You're
mean, yeah,
going through the protocol.
yeah, Romero
Uh,
is a king to me for sure.
But so with that, with that Stephen King, the Jordy one, what I was saying is like even something like that, as funny as it is that like release in the anthology, which plays off of the midnight movies kind of thing or the drive-ins that would show. That's why I think anthologies existed. It's the way to get the condensed, again, that short film version of that idea or that gimmick that you don't think narratively you can stretch or you shouldn't. But I think even that one, I remember later on, like being somebody who is very much aware of textures. Like I don't like folding clothes because like my fingertips, it's weird. I don't know what that is, but anytime I'd feel something fuzzy, I'd immediately be like, "Oh, is this what it would feel like to go through what Stephen King with?" Like I don't know. I think even stuff that's like funny sometimes creeps up to you later, and you're just like, "Huh." Yeah, I laughed at that, but was it a nervous laugh or was it like a condition? Like, was it Pavlovian
Hmm.
because of the pace of it and like where they put it in the anthology, like what it followed? Almost like how you make a track list or like a mixtape where you justify like contextually or rhythmically or musically what the next track is, like even down to a palate cleanser. I think humor and horror, whether it's honest humor, like relationship humor, I think the best horror has humor to some degree.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
agree.
that I can think of anything that like completely is void. I mean, maybe Sallow, but even that, I guess somebody could get like their jollies off somewhere.
Even if, man, I honestly feel like if you had made a movie and it was completely horror, like 100%, it would end up almost being so dour on the audience that it would almost be depressing and not enjoyable. I mean,
I think if I buckled down and tried to like earnestly like everybody on board like, hey, this is the tone, it's straight horror, nothing is funny, like nothing's fucking funny, quit smiling, like I think at the end of the day I'd edit it and it would be funnier than I've ever intended. Like I think it would go the other way because it would just be like, well, this is so serious, like this is so self-serious that this is like The Room. Like that's why I think The Room is funny is because
dude, Room is one of
everybody.
my favorite movies of all time.
So good.
It's the same though as like what always bugs me when you talk about bad movies, whether we're talking about Troma movies or not, or like the perception of horror fans being snobs. There is those subcategories of like, but then there are horror fans that eat horror movies like pizza. Like there's no such thing as bad pizza, which those I think are most for our benefit, the Troma fans, because they also like that kind of that grassroots spirit of like some spit and some duct tape to like make the thing. Like you're seeing actors and actresses in movies, you're just like, man, I could have seen her at the grocery store. Like I know what that like this cast, that lead looks like that. Like, um, but with some horror fans, like we were saying before, you do get those ones who just do not want to mix certain flavors, but
Nope.
I think they do regardless if they're aware of it or not.
I think too, I think there's always that like, I know if I'm gonna watch, say, like, an independent film or a lower budget horror film, I have a set of rules, and I'm probably a lot more lenient because I like to see people take risks, and I like to see people do what they can with that kind of budget. And I also think that you almost have to give kind of a pass because of that reason. Now, when I watch a big Hollywood horror film, I majorly way more critical on that for obvious reasons because I mean they have 600 times more of a budget, and there's really no excuse for that to be bad. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand. I mean, of course you're gonna, expect more out of a, big Hollywood horror film. But I mean, I always think there's always more charm and more determination and work and effort when you're doing a low budget thing, and that always kind of translates on screen too. So I'm always more forgiving of that for that reason.
Well, that's what I was gonna like to tie the loop of what we were talking about before was it bugs me when anybody's like Plan 9 from Outer Space is one of the worst movies of all time. I'm like, motherfucker, Plan 9 from Outer Space isn't the worst Ed Wood movie. Like, if you've ever seen Ed Wood, like, Plan 9 from Outer Space, everybody is trying to make a really good movie. And that goes back to my room comment. I think there's no such thing as a bad movie as long as everybody in the movie is trying. Now, if they are unfortunately doing that thing of where, like, oh, well, maybe if we make this bad, like, no one's trying to make Birdemic bad on purpose. They were trying to make something that I think they thought was going to be good. Like Tommy Wiseau thought he was making. So like again, Sweetmeats. Anybody who watches it, if they're like the horror is bad in this, I'm like, I know. And if they're like the story is like tropey or whatever, like I know. The fact that there's a subreddit for sweetmeats where people were talking about before it came out blew my mind. Where someone's just like, oh, that trailer, like, I don't know. It's got a lot of heavy lifting to do considering it's another restaurant turned cannibalism movie. I'm like, oh man, if you only knew how little that cannibalism storyline is in this like soap opera of misfits.
I
It,
actually want to ask you about that. Like, I had actually, it seems like there wasn't very much inspiration from that. So, like, when I was watching it, I thought maybe this was like a love letter to like films like you'd mentioned before, Blood Feast or maybe Blood Diner or Motel Howard, those kind of like, things. But that actually really didn't end up like being that at all.
What do you think, Riley?
so after the premiere, which was wonderful and at this wonderful theater called the Esquire in Cincinnati, thank you to them, amazing people. Uh, some of the initial reactions I heard outside of people who were not connected to the project was the number one thing was if Sweetmeats had this gigantic Hollywood budget, it would probably star Will Ferrell and John C. Riley. And, and that was like the overheard thing I saw from people like getting in
uh,
their Ubers and doing everything else. I mean, I yeah, I would certainly say
oh my
it's a
God, that's
film
so fun.
that
I mean, I
surprises
would
you.
never think of that myself. I mean that I am saying that humbly because I would never. Um, because the first review we got from a person who got the Blu-ray through our Indiegogo, so that's the first batch of people that got to see the movie kind of in the way it is. Still not the highest quality of visual or sound as it is in the movie theater. That is the best way to see it. Plug to anybody that wants to see the Hands Across America tour. Go on our website, NKY film, thenky.com, because I don't know if Troma has their website updated. Um, but someone was like, Sweetmeats feels like if John Waters made a Christopher Guest movie.
Hmm.
So like that blew me away. And I was like, okay, I can see some elements because like things that we did were actively making choices on while making the movie, while like with camera movements, with doing long takes, having theater actors primarily, we had that benefit for us. But Riley, you saying that fucking cracks me up because I would be in line so hard first day to see Will Ferrell and John C. Riley making sweetmeats, and then like
And
having
I
it be
swear it was
like,
all
is there
those college
music?
students there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wait. Well, I'm sorry. What was that?
And I swear it was all those college students by the movie
Really?
theater who were saying that. Yeah.
And they live around. That's why I love
Right.
that theater. There is that's the independent theater I grew up going to, seeing things like autofocus with my parents when I was like 12. if you know that movie, Paul Schrader film. But so having our premiere there, it's the second time we've done our premiere, and having it be on a Saturday night, having it be sold out. It's in the heart of Cincinnati, where UC, University of Cincinnati is. So a lot of it's the probably the most like art heavy district because anybody that has a business near a college campus, like an indie theater like that, you get the most diverse audience you could possibly get. You have walker by, you actually have foot traffic. It wasn't just people who worked on the movie. Like there were people who bought a ticket because they're like, "What is this weird thing?"
Hmm.
So that I'm glad to hear that, Riley. That is hilarious. The influence I will say of the movies that you mentioned are Motel Motel Hell and Slumber Party Massacre, actually, because both of them I think are amazingly ahead of their time in their satirical approaches, screenplay wise, not necessarily direction or execution, because I think Motel Hell more is a heightened soap opera, like country soap opera, that is playing with the attraction of like drive-in, like gross, quote unquote, gross out movies of the time. Slumber Party Massacre, I actually think is the first scary movie. Like even before I'd have to check the dates of Student Bodies versus Slumber Party Massacre. Whichever one of them came out first. Slumber Party Massacre is almost a parody film on the page. Now, the way they tried to execute it to make it like a scary film is a completely different thing. But the spirit of those movies influenced us, especially the iconography of the pig mask and stuff. And just anytime for me, if you're going to do cannibalism, you're either touching on Texas Chainsaw or you're talking about Motel Hell. But the other thing that was heavily influential were movies like Head, the Monkeys movie, which I'm a huge Monkeys fan.
Come on.
Yeah, the fact that like that movie is the movie that sank a meteor, which was the Monkeys, and then also rose Phoenix from the ashes, independent cinema, like the writer director era that we got into with the 70s with BBS, and Jack Nicholson writing Head, and just the social experiment that of that movie on the backs of sinking this ginormous band, this household name is phenomenal. The sketch nature, the vignettes of that movie, SNL going. I didn't even think of this until we were doing an interview about a month ago. How we go to a home based stage for a musical performance. It's Bobby's dreams, but like that's we keep on going to that. We keep on going to that home base, that stage that you're familiar with. And then another big influence is De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise,
Oh yeah.
and Little Shop of Horrors, like any Faustian thing. But yeah, the idea that Phantom of the Paradise, the music is diegetic, where they're not really breaking out into songs. There are performances built into this piece. That's what Sweetmeats is because I didn't again my vision wasn't to have it be this breakout into song musical. Not to say that's not something I wouldn't do, but it's also a love letter to my dad and like stuff he grew up with. Like my dad says he doesn't love musicals, but he loves White Christmas. He loves Smokey and the Bandit 1 and 2, Every Which Way But Loose, and Any Which Way You Can, which those soundtracks, like the needle drops, that's like that's my first like entry point into being like, oh, these are needle drops for an album, and this is basically a musical for heterosexual beer drinking like blue collar white men. This is their musical. They just don't know it's a musical.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to have people performing songs in it. I mean, that just
Well,
goes
you do.
to
You
show
have
you.
Don Williams. You have Glenn
Oh shit,
Campbell
that's
on
right.
stage. You have Don Williams smoking the bandit too. I mean, you literally have Jerry Reed in the movie. in both those movies. You have all the Palomino Club. I mean, Palomino Club exists in Hooper. You have all of these movies that these men that like. It's so funny. My dad wasn't a fan of the dark auteur 70s films, the remakes of The Searchers, like from the film brats. He didn't love them when he was young. He liked the lighter, bigger movies, but now he has gone back and we've discussed, unbeknownst to him, his now like five favorite movies are all written by Paul Schrader and are all
Oh.
depressing as hell.
You had mentioned before how you have, like the songs and things interspersed into the movie. Is that whenever you're shooting something like that, is that a different animal? Do you have to handle that in a different way than if you were just to do with like a regular scene in a movie? Is it harder when you actually have to incorporate, playing songs in a film as well?
We did that all in one night after
Get the
shooting.
fuck out of here. Are you serious?
Yeah, after shooting all day. So
How many hours did it take to do everything?
that was so the musical performances, except for the Laddie and Bobby one, that was a post principal photography shoot. And you can see I have a fake mustache and the devil's woman.
Yeah, I see
Um,
that.
A
which
song
I
from movie person.
I can justify that all day if I have to come up with a BS reason. The real reason was we were done filming. I had to get family photos, like, and my wife's like, clean face, man.
Ixnay on the
Uh,
mustache.
she's digging the single mustache now, but back then, there was a thing of with our first film, I had really long hair and a very big beard, and then Sweetmeats when it became that I was going to be the main character or the lead, which I think clickbait. Laddie is actually it's the movies. I think Sweetmeats, the Legend of Laddie Sweet or Laddie Grook. Um, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna grow my hair out. I'm gonna have my beard as long as I can because one dramatic thing we can do as indie filmmakers is we can film chronologically and give myself a makeover within the movie and maybe like you decide like does he look better? I don't know. Like he's becoming the paper doll that Laddie wants. But both films, my wife is just like, God, she's like, if you continue to act in things, can you not have your characters look like they're homeless? Like, can you not, like, can they, like, not look like dirty homeless people? And I'm like, I think that's insensitive to homeless people. I'm like, I think that's insensitive to unhoused people. Um, but no, so besides that, yeah, all musical segments. We had filmed Saturday. It was day 6 in our filming schedule. That's the day we did all the extras and all the antique cars at Nick's restaurant. So we did all of that in one day. And then on the Saturday with all the extras and all the antique cars and the largest amount of people we had had on set during this filming process, we then went and stupidly we had already scheduled. We had forgotten kind of this. It was going to be in the middle of our filming, or towards the end of our long filming. Was we went and did we had All Your Friends Are Dead showing as the final film of a film festival, a horror film festival, first year film festival at this indie theater in Englewood, Ohio. We had agreed, Nick Hyance and I, to go and do a Q&A and present the film. So which that's about an hour and a half away. We just spent all day filming the largest things we had filmed for the film, and wrangled the most amount of people, and very appreciative of all the people that are basically giving their time for 100% $0, zero pay, zero copies of the film. We were like, just so you know, if you want to guarantee that you see this movie, like get the Blu-ray on our Indiegogo, like because that's the level of movie we are. And luckily, people are excited. 100 people sign up, 50 show up. But long day. Then we're like, oh, we agreed to do this. Like, okay. We drove to Inglewood for All Your Friends Are Dead screening. I fell asleep during the movie, but then had enough energy afterwards to talk to some people in the lobby. That's a plug because Hands Across Jamaica is coming to Inglewood, and Sweetmeats is going to be there. Lloyd and I will be there for that screening as well. April 26th, uh, Inglewood, Ohio. But so then Sunday, we filmed all of the extras and all of the montage song scenes in the basement where people are shackled up and all the tongues are ripped out. We filmed all of that the next morning,
Oh,
starting at like 7 a.m. at the basement of Bobby Mackey's with a ton of coffee, um, and snacks and stuff, and as much craft services for the amount of people. So we had it on like a revolving door. Trace Walker, our assistant director and script supervisor, which two jobs you should never have one person do. They conflict. That's just a word of advice. Um, but he is helping facilitate with Mike Flincham, one of our executive producers, and Chris Morris, one of our executive producers, people from upstairs in Bobby Mackey's down to the basement. Like, all right, waves of like group number two for getting your tongue pulled out, and everybody has their fake tongue and cup of blood, and we've all tasted it, and blah 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 with our special effects team, Lizzie Shrebus, Sophie Farris, and Steve Shrebus. And everyone's like, yep, yep, yep. All right, okay. And then it's like, all right, that group gone. Cheerleaders, cheerleader. Like, all right, what are we doing song playbacks for? We need to get stuff for Catching You. We need to get stuff for The Grind. We need to get stuff for this, and this. We did all of that from 7 a.m. till probably 3 p.m. And then had some pizza there and stuff for people upstairs and some small craft services provided by us. And then we reconvened at Darkness Brewing Brewery, which we filmed Some of All Your Friends Are Dead and the performance stuff for Sweetmeats on their stage, which was a newly renovated backroom performance area. We reconvened, I think, at 6:30, and we're there from 6:30 p.m. till I think 10:30 with that backup band, which it's Nick Vitus, who owned Nick's Restaurant, which is in the movie. He plays in a band. It's not necessarily that band, but is one of those guys that is great on guitar, bass, whatever, knows enough guys that they're like, yeah, we can do this. Again, it's these weird confluences and these connections to make this all happen. Um, and I just had a weird like thought of I always worry that as somebody who produces my own things, am I stifling myself while I'm writing because I'm thinking about future producing? And in that moment, I'm just like, no, because clearly, if I was like, can I find somebody that can like be a band and back us up and do this, and this, and I would never write that. So I'm just patting myself on the back there. But we all got together and that band, they were such good musicians. They heard the playback tracks twice and they actually could play along knowing the songs because the songs that I wrote were so fucking simple. As a joke made in the movie, if you know three basic chords, you know how to play country music.
yeah.
So,
Really. Well, let me
so
ask you, how long does it take to write your script from beginning to end, where it's actually all banged out and there's no more revisions or changes or anything? How long did that take? Hmm.
For Sweetmeats, it's
Yeah.
crazy because Open House, which was the movie we tried to fund on Kickstarter, and we couldn't because we put it on Front Street that it was a horror musical comedy. Um, and we got a bunch of retweets and some great press just on the crowdfunding. None of that translated into numbers on the Kickstarter, and we couldn't make that happen. So this connects to that story that I told earlier of I had already been talking and kind of like outlining these ideas of like, well, what if a prequel happened about 40 years ago? And then I was like, well, okay, if I take that, some of these songs, we had the restaurant secured for 3 days worth of filming. I was like, okay, if I go to Nick, who already agreed to let us film there for 3 days, maybe he'd let us film there for 8 days or 7 days. And he did, which was great. And I also was on Front Street about like what the movie was, and he immediately was just like, "Oh, so kind of like how like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, like It's pretty tongue in cheek. And I'm like, yeah. And he might have even mentioned like Blood Feast. And I was like, oh, I was like, all right, I don't have to sell you on this like at all. Like you get like the ballpark we're playing in, or like the court we're playing in. But as far as like for the people who support independent films via crowdfunding, a lot of times they want to support something that has some TNA or some heightened gore,
Mhm.
which this movie really has neither. Um, which I don't feel like a ton bad about because in the text and everything that we posted and like updates, like if you wanted to support the movie, it's like, okay, we're 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 telling you kind of what this movie is if you follow along. But the proof of concept, a video that I shot on my iPhone with Chris Morris, Jess Larson, or Jess Picado, and Olivia, um, I was like, okay, we're gonna move to Indiegogo and I'm gonna shoot this TNA like this feels like a late 70s porn, like low production, but I'm gonna feature a song. I'm gonna feature a country song. And I'm gonna feature the pig mask, which was gonna be an open house, the butcher's outfit. It's all gonna be there. And this is almost like my teaser, like Lynchian, like way into being like, so give us money. Because like maybe like what did you like about that? Like, oh, you want to see this? Was any of that cool? Like the pig mask and the meat grinder and all that. Like it's pretty on Front Street. I think of like a parody of those almost like Eli Roth Thanksgiving. But I made one of those to be like, okay, I'm gonna include music in this. Like you know what you're getting if you support this. And it weirdly got the funding that we couldn't get. Large, I mean, we already had the funding we were trying to get before even Troma signed on. But then once Troma signed on, that kind of doubled to what we could do and actually pay people to do, which was a blessing. But to go back to what you were saying before, it took maybe a month and a half, but that's because they weren't new ideas to me. Like I said, I had Fleetwood Macbeth, where like one of the things I did in that was I made Lady Macbeth and Banquo brother and sister. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things, the relationship things that like I always like to have some good, strong relationships in whatever I'm doing, whether I do them well or not. If I make you emotionally care about the people or not, um, I always try to have that so that the dialogue I'm writing isn't just this like dreck that's just like, oh, and this is just a time filler, and people do weird impressions like of James Cagney. That may be my like shady slide at the original Friday the 13th script. I love what Victor Miller did, but a lot of dialogue in horror movies is awful. So if I can have some sort of relationship and if I can base it off like something like Shakespeare, like Macbeth, so I have that this female character hates that all these men have this control in her life and like she doesn't want I mean, she will continue to get as much as she can. But at this stage in the game, she just thinks that their restaurant, which is sad, should be selling burgers and fries. So the script, yeah, it took like maybe a month and a half. And I already had some songs in the bank from other things that I had written for. And I was like, that kind of perfectly fits in this here. And then with David Kornfeld, our arranger, a guy who I've worked with since Chicago, writing storefront musical theater, we have a really good shorthand and we work pretty quickly. If I send him something that's a cappella or even just something basic on a acoustic guitar, he gets a pretty good idea of what we're going for because I'll be like, all right, and here's a couple reference points of like, here's a Michael Nesmith song, Grand Ennui, from one of his solo albums. I'm kind of wanting it to sound like this, or like Jerry Reed, or lives in this area here. He has a really good ear for that, and we work pretty quickly. So the music kind of all came together pretty quickly too.
What I wanted to ask you as well is what was the biggest challenge filming, and what's your best memory and least fond memory for making this film?
Um, the fondest memory of making it, I love every piece of the puzzle of filmmaking, of being, I don't know if it's narcissism, but I really like being the person who makes the spark, like makes the fire, warms the like I'm part of every facet of it. I really like that because just of the excitement of it. It's also why like I do stand-up comedy, but that's not my favorite expression. I like working with other people. Like I love like having people like Riley come in and get their opinion on things, or the cast and be like, okay, we all know the characters, we all trust each other. How can this grow? How can this be unique to you? And everybody feels comfortable with it. But I do like being at each stage of it. Uh, Filming, I really liked I mean, each scene, I purposely wrote Bobby to have a stutter and to not talk that much, but like you feel like he's a lead character because he's singing all these songs. Like I maybe had 20 lines in the movie, and that's by curation because I was just like, all right, we got Timmy Barron, who is a comedian from Chicago, Second City comedian that I worked with. Eileen Ernest, who is in All Your Friends Are Dead, that we killed off too early. She's an amazing improviser and actor. I'm like, okay, Andrew Gordon, who via submission, via a talent agency submission, got his video, who was delightful to watch. And like most time, video auditions are really, really bad and hard to sit through. His was delightful, and it was just like, yep, he gets it. I love the all the Eileen scenes, all the Laddie and Bobby scenes of where it's almost like the re-signing of the lease of the deal with the devil. If the devil was just like, hey, like terms and agreements of like how your phone updates. If the devil every now and then had to be like, look, so like legally I know we already have a contract, but like through some new things that have come up, like I have to have you re-sign here. Those scenes with Laddie that are the three throughout crack me up. I love how she has these connections with the rest of her family that they all share one thing in common. If you think Laddie, Jerry, and Nick are completely different, the one thing they all have in common is they love to hide things and reveal them. Uh, Nick does it with his bag that he's packed to go to Florida, the booze, and the contract. Um, Laddie does it with the crown. That when she's at the end of that long scene, where she's like, "You could have it
The
your
Burger
way."
King crown yet?
Yeah, the king, yeah, makes the Burger King, and then Jerry at the end for panties dropping country star song pulls the guitar out of the same spot that his dad used. I love that they all so like Laddie and her dad also have other things in common that she would never like address even to a therapist of like they both have IBS because when that coffee hits their stomachs like they
Oh
have to
yeah.
poop. We
Oh yeah.
see that at the end. So like different little weird things like that. I love having those connections, and I know like I don't sit down, I'm not like thinking about like how important it is to have them, but like stuff like that. Timmy, the where he did here's the thing about improviser and stage actors. It's great too because they ask you for levels, which I don't think a lot of film, just straight commercial actors do. Is they're like, "What do you want this at?" And it's like between a one and a three, and it's just like, "All right, give me a one," and that's like more serious.
Mm.
And they're like two, it's a little heightened, and then three is like,
Woohoo.
yeah, carnival, yeah, it's vaudevillian, like it's from the back of the house, like it's painted face, it's kabuki. Um, But so like in the backroom scene with Jerry, where Bobby, after he feels dejected by Nick, and Jerry tries to talk him up, and he's like, what if someone told Charles Manson not to get those hippies to get like that? All those lines were scripted, not improvised. Uh, but Timmy's portrayal of each one of those, we did it three times, which we Three is like the max amount of shoots you can do in a movie that it's run and gun with no lighting setups. The camera's on a monopod for reasons, we justify it with we wanted it to have that documentary feeling, or that like VH1 like behind the music or like made for TV band movie or whatever. We wanted it to have that with the soap opera dynamics and the visuals. But like filming Timmy do those that run of three, which is our version of the Animal House, kind of think like Bluto's like Charge, uh, was hilarious. While also like, I mean, Eileen, the one thing that was added to the movie that wasn't scripted was the banana story for
Yeah.
Jerry. Timmy was like, I have this idea for this thing I want to do. And he pitched it to Nick Hynes and I. And he said, he's like, and I think it works with this character for this, this, and this. Jerry's very on the spectrum. And then at the end, he's like, I figured at this point he could, almost get it open and doesn't. And we're like, yes, I love that it has a narrative. I love, and then we made the music video at the end of Jerry's Heaven being all the bananas. But the first day that Eileen and Timmy filmed together is when Timmy has the banana and he's sitting up on the counter, which is also higher than Laddie, which she clocks, which I love Eileen for that. She's just like, oh, even the idiot has higher positioning than I do. Like, oh. But as an actor, Eileen clocked because we forgot to tell Eileen this story of this banana that Timmy had sold to us because we're all wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
But in the first take, you can see, and I think that's the take we use, she clocks him with that banana. So after that take, Eileen's like, okay, let me just figure out what's this thing with the banana. So he's going to have a banana sitting basically upstaging like behind me. And then it was at that moment she's like, all right, game sees game. One of my favorite moments is the day we filmed the scene where Jerry and Laddie come head to head. I won't spoil it, but the choice that Eileen made, she's like, okay, Jerry, he has the banana on him in this scene when I come out with the shovel. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, what if I do this? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, that's awesome. And so it's the beauty of like being able to collaborate with people. Least favorite day, it was Saturday with all the extras. We filmed also that Trans Am scene where he writes over a million severed or 100 severed or whatever
Yeah. And
on the sign. I was at the end of my day. It was hot. Driving a Trans Am, which is a boat of a vehicle. I know I snipped at quite a few people that day. It was a lot, and I hope I apologize. I didn't do anything like that. Riley's going to be like, I do not know Ricky Glore. I'm no longer associated. I just was I
No
was
loyalty. Yeah.
yeah, I was a little snappy. I think I was a little snippier at people that day than I had been, and I needed to go to Inglewood, Ohio, and sleep through my own movie to feel better the next day.
And I will say too, for the severed scene that was just mentioned, both at the test screening of Sweetmeats and at the premiere, the audiences go wild for that scene. You just feel it in the room between the laughs and the oh my god. It's yeah.
Speaking of laughs, what was it like working with my personal hero, the great Lloyd Kaufman? Do you have any good Lloyd stories from when he was doing his Duckman?
I did not record that. That was Lloyd's first assistant, which is very he deserves kudos for Sweetmeats being with Troma. As Garrett Sullivan was his assistant at the time that Sweetmeats was acquired. And not only did he love the script, he is also the one that got it in front of Lloyd, being
Oh,
Lloyd's
nice.
assistant.
Yeah, I've
And
bothered Garrett on many occasions.
Garrett is fantastic.
He's a
I've
good guy for sure.
Andrew Miller's Lloyd's new assistant, who is fantastic as well. But Garrett filmed that with Lloyd and a green screen and did a great job giving us a bunch of different takes. No, my best Lloyd story is not in the movie. I mean, he knocked it out of the park. It's hilarious. The the best story, the best story that didn't happen was that I also concurrently I was gonna have Lloyd Duckwood commercials throughout the whole movie, and I was gonna have a carpet company throughout the whole movie, and those commercials were going to be led by Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, and just couldn't make it happen. Like as
Oh man,
bad
I've
as
met Mickey before. He's such a nice dude.
I have
That would have been
many a story.
amazing. Yeah.
I sang on stage with the Monkees numerous times from like '96, dressed up in the shirt and hat as Little Mike Nesmith.
No
Um,
way.
I have a history with Mickey. It was his manager that just could not wrap her head around. She's like, "What is this?
Oh man.
What's the movie?" And I'm just like, "Look, we can go to wherever he is. We have the green screen." But we didn't film Lloyd. But my favorite story is for the premiere, Lloyd flew into the Cincinnati airport, which this was a great Who's On First explaining to Lloyd was the Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky. It's near Hebron, Kentucky, where the Creationist Museum is. And I picked him up from the airport, and he very nicely was just like, "I want to take you and your family out to dinner when I come in." And I said, "That is very nice." He's like, "Your boys, which are a year and 3 months old at the time, and my daughter, who's 5.5 years old, and my wife and I." I'm like, "That is very nice, Lloyd." When my twins were born, which I had only known him for 2 months, he sent us a box of Tiffany's, which I thought it was a joke. I thought somebody sent us like they had a Tiffany's box, but he actually bought it. It was two silver spoons, and he sent a little card that said, "Your boys should be born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Their
Oh.
Uncle Lloyd."
Oh.
And I was just like, this is very sweet. Um, Not to say that Riley also on opening night of the premiere gave us a very, very nice bottle of wine. Correct wine?
Yeah, it was import from Italy. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Very, very, very good wine. Because most of the time you do not drink good wine. And then when you taste good wine, you're like, this is good. Um, but the best Lloyd story is so in lieu of going out to eat, I was like, what would be easy for me is my parents actually live not too far from the airport. My parents would also happily, my dad being a cinephile and who introduced me to movies, who introduced me to VHS tapes of Troma films, which Lloyd would introduce with a 10-minute introduction to the movie you already decided you're going to watch. Like, I always thought it was awesome. Uh, but he came to my parents' house and we had chili and spaghetti with Nick Hynes and his wife, my kids playing in the next room. And we had Grater's ice cream, and Nick brought some bourbon, and we just ate and drank for like 3 hours, and then I took him to the hotel for the night where some people had recognized him, which was amazing. Um, and he said he's like, yeah, he's like he's like they see a small Jew and they think either Mel Brooks
Mel Brooks. Yeah, he
or
always looks
Lloyd Kaufman. So that's my Lloyd story.
That's great, man. Let me ask you. I got a couple more for you before we close up here. If you could pick one horror film that you would actually like to have the chance to update and put your own spin on, what would you like to do?
Riley, what is yours? I would be fascinated. Is it going to be another Ingmar Bergman?
Yeah. Yeah. We aren't touching the seventh seal there. The God, let me
Oh,
think.
you could though. I mean, if you were going to.
Yeah. Part of me feels like the Creature from the Black Lagoon sequel where he for some reason destroys San Francisco. There's either two or three. I feel
Yeah.
like there's room there to
Well, you know,
yeah.
Riley, one of our first ideas for a follow-up was super auspicious for All Your Friends Are Dead, which was basically the Shape of Water creature from the Black Lagoon, but it's a community pool, and the movie's called Have Fun, Don't Run. It's a musical, and it's not a love story about how this like old aging Wendy Peppercorn from Sandlot like falls in love with a fish man. It is she straight up fucks a fish man, and that fish man kills everything to give her what she needs at her low status, YMCA job. So
Dear
that
David Zasloff, if you're hearing this, there's a good Adult Swim series.
uh, oh, I so Nick Hines not into musicals. When I told him that idea, we were smoking cigars at the celebration of All Your Friends Are Dead. I think having just premiered, or we sold it to SRS for our contract time, uh, and that's how you can watch it on Tubi now. Um, but I pitched that, and his wife's like, "What? No." She's like, "That's not what you guys should do next." And Nick was like, "I like it. It's very strange." He's like, "This is interesting." He's like, "I can see like some musical numbers and blah 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 blah," which is great. Like, I love having Nick on board for any idea, which he has to be. That's like part of our agreement right now. Is like for at least one more film, we all have to be agree on board of what we want to do. But the what you find out with that is when you have no budget, it is hard to get a community pool without like an exorbitant amount of insurance because people are going to be in water.
Mm. Yeah, I actually did a short film and I had a hard time trying to find a place I didn't need insurance for to shoot in a library. So I can only imagine a swimming pool. Let me
But
ask. Oh, I'm sorry.
wait, so yeah, no, so Creature, mine is Phantasm. As much of a Elm Street fan as I am, I would love to tackle the Phantasm series, and I would probably pitch it as a mini series on something like Netflix.
Ooh, I would love to see something like that. I'm a
I
big
would lean into more of the relationship of the brothers and Reggie with his time possibly in Vietnam of being a vet and back into the small town and how his reception is with that. One thing that's exercised from the 3 hour cut that Don Coscarelli did ultimately is Reggie's ice cream shop, which I think if you have a little bit more time and you have not a Stranger Things Spielbergian vibe, but I think you could infuse more of Ray Bradbury's "Something Wicked This Way Comes,"
ooh, that's a
which
classic. Mm.
which is Phantasm is heavily inspired by. I think you could do easily a 6 episode miniseries just with the world of that first film, and then if that did well, holy shit, Phantasm 2 is already T2. Like it is like the bigger, badder. Like it's, I mean, it's yeah, it's just got everything that like the idea of a sequel. Like it is Rambo First Blood Part 2. Like it is sequel, quintessential sequel. If that first season did well, you could come back with a higher budget and really do that like ladies like late 80s metal like Dokken like sequel series, and then you could finish it off if you did have an ending, which unfortunately the movie series doesn't have. So that's what I would do.
And ended at the White Lotus, right? Get season two.
Which I did just start. I am only 4 episodes in on the first season.
I'm so far behind on that. Everyone I've heard's been talking about it, and now I finally have to get on the bus late. I think I'm going to start watching it this weekend. I think.
Season two is my favorite. It's hands down. It's
Who helms? Who are the main actors that helm season
uh,
two?
Jennifer Coolidge, Audrey Plaza,
Ooh,
uh, God, uh, Megan Fahey, who has that new kind of low budget Universal horror movie out now, which is kind of in the line of like Red Eye, but
Yeah, yeah. Red Eye. Oh my gosh.
oh,
I
that's a
remember
classic, dude.
I was such a Wes Craven fan, man. And
Oh, dude,
like,
I love Red Eye, man.
Deadly
Really good.
Blessings, I love.
Oh God, dude, that Deadly Blessing's a classic, man.
That and Serpent. I love folk horror in general. So
oh, oh,
Serpent
Serpent
and
in
the
the Rainbow.
Rainbow. Oh yeah, dude.
Serpent in the Rainbow and People Under the Stairs are low key classics, but the man made some turds. If I have to, if I mean nobody has done the celebrity.
Cursed, but anyway.
His last movie. What is not Scream? Scream 4. I actually dig. I like the Kevin Williamson screams. Um, but
Is that the
oh
one
my
with the
god,
serial killer?
the high school one, the haunt.
yeah, where it's
Yeah,
they're all connected.
yeah, that was
My
really.
soul to take.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was it.
Soul to
My
Take.
Yeah,
soul to
boy,
take.
is that a fucking
Oh
bullshit.
man,
Oh,
what a turd burglar.
that sucks that he has to go out on that. You know.
But the thing is, like with Craven, nobody's done the celebrity death match. But when they're talking about like the masters of horror, if you want to go decade for decade, and the man could beat him because he's still alive. But when they're like Carpenter or Craven, I'm like, man,
Oh
you
man,
get Last House on the Left.
shit, man, I'd have to sit down and really think about that.
You got The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left in the same decade. Carpenter has Halloween. I mean, it's Halloween, but like,
I love They Live too, though, man. Or as I like to call the documentary that's going on right
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
but no. I mean, the thing is, like,
Support your keepers. Yeah.
Oh, the
he's
thing is,
got some
oh,
fantastics, but so do Craven's turds, though. Knocked down where like Carpenter in his time, his turds have now
the
become
Ward.
classics, like Big Trouble in Little China and The
Yeah.
Thing. Like,
He's had some
I
bad ones though too, like bad ones, like the Ward. That was really bad. Oh,
oh, I think John Carpenter's Vampires.
dude,
I think
dude,
it's
I actually love John Carpenter's Vampires.
I don't know why. Like for some reason, I think it's now a punked thing. Whenever I've gone on podcasts and they're like, "Do you want to watch a movie with us and like review it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm happy to come on." Like excuse to watch a movie, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna do John Carpenter's Vampires." I'm like, "Man, I can't keep watching that movie."
I
But
don't know,
also
man.
too, we have to thank Carpenter's producer Mohammed. I'm probably mispronouncing your name, Kalada or whatever his last name was, because of the money he made off of the Halloween movies.
Yeah,
Mustafa
He
Akkad.
then, yeah, he
yeah,
then directed two phenomenal epic films. One was The Messenger, and the other was The Lion in the Desert, which each on their own, if he only did one, would have been perfect.
yeah. And there's no reason to like even stack anybody up against one another. I think I'm just more angry that Carpenter is choosing not to swing the bat,
Hmm.
like to not just like I mean I get it if he is just like I've said what I've wanted to say and that's it. Like I mean like my one friend Eric Hunter, he throughout high school and even like beginning of college was a singer songwriter guy with a guitar, was doing gigs at bars and like was hustling and got did some indie albums and then just one day was just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. He's like, I actually want to be an author. And so
I
he
can
didn't completely like leave writing because he was a singer-songwriter, but he was just like, that's not what I want to do anymore. I just don't see like Carpenter has not made any
Last thing he did was the pilot for a TV show, and he directed it remotely. So I think he's more focused on doing scores now than I think he kind of lost his mojo for directing at this point. And
I guess yeah, maybe he was burnt. Maybe he was hurt by the system too many times. Maybe he was a
that's kind
scorned
of
lover.
smart though, you know. Like I mean, I'd rather him, take a break than like do things against his will, and it's your heart and your passions and on into it. So I mean, but anyway, let me just I just want to ask you real quick before we close, which I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here today, which is great. So well, let me close before we even say anything. I just wanted to leave you with how much I really enjoyed your film. Like I honestly think Sweet Meats is really great. I'm really glad that Troma gave you a chance and he put that out and they helped along the way and it really does feel kind of very Troma adjacent. It's a really good companion piece for any Troma film. I'm glad that they actually put that out and I'm glad they continue to kind of do things and help you guys along the way. But what are you doing in the future? Are you going to be doing any more, is there going to be another maybe prequel to Sweet Meats or is it going to be something completely different or can you give me
Pre
any inside info?
prequel a prequel to Sweetmeats. No, one of the sequel ideas, numerous. Troma owns it. It's up to them. They could have a Sweetmeats sequel in production right now, and we would have zero say so.
Oh,
Uh, that I mean, that I'm not saying that maliciously. That is something I didn't uh, think of to put in at the time. I have since thought of, but not because of this or not because of any ill will, to have like right to refusal of sequels. I just didn't think of it. And then it wasn't until I was in the midst of selling another script that someone was like, you know, what you should ask for is the right to refusal of sequels. Or like Kevin Smith did, which I knew owned the IP of the original characters.
yeah.
Um, again, it's not anything I regret. I'm not empty without having ideas. Like I I have a pretty full cantina when it comes to things that I want to do. It just all depends on budget and time and resources. Um, so Sweetmeats, possible sequel would be do it contemporary times and it's set on a farm to table kind of ordeal that is run exclusively by women. Um, and then that becomes like your Saw hostile,
Mm,
like that becomes your scary, like that poster of the pig mask. It
yeah.
becomes the movie you thought you might be getting when you see that. Um, the other idea would be 5 years later, after Sweetmeats, whatever year it takes place in this ambiguous time of the late 70s, early 80s. It's a fairy tale, but it's a handful of years later, and Bobby and Laddie are hosting a variety show very much in the vein of like a Sonny and Cher, or if Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton had a variety show, or like a Tammy Faye Baker, the Bakers, because they're a bit of evangelists too, and it's a fundraiser. And what we find out is within the time of the last movie and their shit being franchised and them being on Grand Ole Opry and all this television appearances, and they're a hit. Um, is that Bobby also has a dad, and he's very much like a Colonel Tom Parker. And so he is the only other person that is able to get in between the business dealings and the emotional dealings of his son and Laddie. So he's another guy that we're seeing this apex of this like I know I'm just spinning this. So if anybody ever wants to make this, if they're like, I like this idea, we'll fund this. That's why I'm happy to share it, because now we also have the place where it was officially recorded and said. Um, is there's this like charity like telethon thing where it has to happen. It's in real time. It would be our version of Late Night with the Devil. It would happen in
Mm.
real time of this variety show slash telethon thing where there's probably going to be patricide again because also we know that Laddie gives birth to lineage with the wraparounds of Sweetmeat. So like if you're playing the Marvel game of like where do they end up, it's like, well, Laddie ends up an old woman. We didn't see Bobby. Was Bobby dead? I don't know. So sorry. Riley, what do you that answered some of it ain't gonna be a Sweetmeats too. I don't know. It's ever changing depending on what budget we think we can have. And it also depends on what kind of movie we think we should make. Should we lean into humor? Should we lean into making a film like try to make the best film we can, but then does that cost more? That's where we're at right now. We've got probably about three different things that we're entertaining the ideas of.
I just wanted to ask you real quick before we close. Can you offer any words of wisdom to my audience of any words of wisdom? What would it be like to be if you want to get into being a director, a writer, actor, or anything like that? What was the best key piece of advice you could tell people? Hmm.
Riley, what would you tell somebody that
God. I would say everyone is on their own journey. What I love about filmmaking and or theater or visual arts, unlike being an accountant, there is no easy one or two to get into this thing, right? And it's a long haul and a long journey, and just find people who are like-minded in this business, and you will succeed. And to quote Lloyd, make your own damn movie. Uh, it's no, and it's especially right now too. Well, kind of the Hollywood and global industry is in flux between streaming and everything else. There's probably no better time, much like the 70s, to be an independent film and to make your project, and it will be seen somewhere. And hopefully you're not watching on your phone, but will be seen somewhere.
as Riley said to me, he's like, I have a friend. I think you called them a friend, not just a contact, in Japan, who might be interested in having Sweetmeats screen in Japan because they like the trailer, and it's just like, I am not, nothing. I'm not Teflon to anything when it comes to anything that I've created. That when I hear something like that, like I'm just as much fangirling. I'm just like, really? I'm like, that's amazing. Like, that's insane. It's insane to me. Like, really? Like, these people will go and they will go see. and here's the shameless plug, Hands Across America from now through June. If you go on, like I said, uh, www.nkyfilms or thenky.com, you can see the listing, and I believe there are ticket links there that you can click through our website and find all the different showings, and you can find information about like who will be where. I will be at Inglewood Cinemas on April 26th, and then I will be at the Sorg Theater in Middletown, Ohio. I think that's in May. I'm not sure on the exact date of that. And then I may be at the Memphis screening at the end of the tour. And then I think Riley and I have talked about, and Nick Greystone have talked about maybe some East Coast, Upper East Coast dates and maybe around New York or Connecticut of just sweetmeats. And so just stay following all the social medias, the websites. And the biggest advice for me is this thing. Like this thing has everything. Like, do not be precious with your ideas. Like, you think of something stupid, like film it. Like, if you see your vision, like put it together. Splice is a great free app for a certain amount of functions that you can use it for. There's so many different photo editing websites that you can do different edits and things. If you're looking for a filter, Prequel is a great tool, but like I said, Splice is a great editing tool. Uh, Filmic Pro is a great filming app if you want to use that. Blackmagic Camera has a great filming app that you can use. So much things can be done in this.
And if it
Find,
wasn't for the iPhone 2, just jump on your point,
yeah,
long term, you would not have Sean Baker winning the Oscar for Honora
yeah,
because his film Tangerine entirely shot on the iPhone.
yeah. It's not about. It's almost the same thing as if anybody's ever heard the Tarantino thing about formatting scripts. Format doesn't fucking matter. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your thing looks like. It matters the story that you want to tell. And if your concept is that you have $1 million story, it's like, cool, then you have nothing. It's great to have a possibly winning lottery ticket if those numbers are never called. Like one day, well, this could be like, doesn't matter. Like, man, like have a story that you want to tell that you can shoot by yourself visually with a handful of friends or whatever. I mean, that's the reason why we made our first film was Nick Heinz and I, who had made some short films, and we started making a sketch comedy show for a cable access channel. We were in our mid 30s, and we both were talking at our day job, and we were like, all right, if we had one regret 10 years from now, what would it be? And I was like, I think it would be that we never attempted making a feature length film. I was like, because I think if we came up with the right idea, I just think we could do it. And I think that's something we should do. And it's weird because it's not a noble cause. Like, oh, couple of middle-aged white guys want to make a movie. Like, but I was like, yeah, I was like, I think that's something we should attempt because I think if we never try, I think that's something we would regret. And he said, yeah, he's like, weirdly enough, me too. And like, Heinz isn't like the overly sentimental kind of guy. Uh, but again, he recognized that shorthand that we had it with each other with filming short films and doing that. Like, if you have a comedy shorthand with somebody, it goes a long way. There's a lot of trust there. So, like, while we were filming, this is a short story to highlight why your script coordinator should not be your assistant director. Is assistant director is supposed to keep everything on pace, and when you're in an indie world, you don't have money and you don't have time. But as your script supervisor, they're trying to make sure that you film everything that's on the page. But when you have the star of the film, who is the writer and the director, the producer and the editor, and the cinematographer is also an editor and also like is part of the creative process, um, we would do some takes and Trace would just be like, all right, well, we got to get that from a different angle, right? And we're like, Heinz and I would look at each other and we're like, no. I was like, that'll work. And he was just like, no. He's just like, there's no way that works. And we're like, just trust. Like, we're this is gonna have to be our dialogue. Like if it doesn't work, we know that you said it won't work, but we're pretty sure, having done this for a long time, just him and I, it will work with what we're trying to achieve. And if it doesn't, like me and Nick are going to be the ones that are going to have to find creative ways to edit it. But that is why you shouldn't have both of those roles. But yeah, film your movie. You have this.
It's really that simple.
I think so.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, in ego and confidence.
Hmm.
and even too pre-iPhone. I mean, think of people like John Cassavetes or Barbara Hammer in kind of the more underground New York scene, right? They took whatever was the most consumer-based technology for cameras at that time and just shot whatever they did. And then Cassavetes obviously blew up later with A Woman Under the Influence, and Barbara Hammer then got into bigger museums in New York with her films. But yeah, it's all possible by whatever consumer technologies there for people to play with.
Would
Yeah,
you
because
ever
then you can then be innovators.
would you ever attempt to shoot a film on an iPhone?
I would. I did. I tried to do a no budget a feature film that was going to have musical elements that I got a lot of great talented people on board with. It's now on our NKY Films YouTube channel. Um, I don't want to ever waste anybody's time, and that experiment that I started, we got about 12 minutes in, and I was like, okay, filming this by myself basically with people who did some coloring and some score, and then Eric Hunter, who was the one other actor that I acted with in it. Um, I was the cameraman. I was holding it on a stick and placing the tripod and blah blah blah, and then having musical elements. I got out of my system what I wanted to try to do, and I was just like, okay, it's not going to get better than this. There's no way that this can become a feature that I would want to involve anybody else further in and waste, not waste, but like use their time, because I have done the amount that I think I can do with. And that wasn't like I don't want to ever work. Like, can I make stuff all by my own? No, I love collaborating. I was just like, all right, let me see if I can truly do a no budget without really pulling in a lot of favors. Um, but no, I would shoot on an iPhone, no problem. There's so many different attachments like Moondog Labs. Uh, we use the anamorphic lens that they provided to me for they basically sponsored the short I did called Racist, that I made before All Your Friends Are Dead. Uh, I mean, Sean Baker used so many different plugins, different additions, just showing that it doesn't matter what the vessel is, it's the story that you're telling. And if you do have, if you have lighting people, if you if you have these different departments and you trust them, you can make something shot on whatever. Oh my gosh, I don't know his name and I wish I did. Bruce, maybe something. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the cinematographer for that, he recreated the opening scene with Patricia Arquette when she has her first nightmare, where she goes through the house and she's
Yeah,
carrying the little girl and it turns into a skeleton.
skeleton.
Yeah, and all the hanging bodies. That cinematographer recreated that, and they redid the sets to a pretty good approximation in lighting, and he refilmed it all with a gimbal and an iPhone with some
What?
attachments.
Where
And
do I
like you
see that
can,
at?
it's on YouTube. If you search it, recreation Nightmare on Elm Street 3
Oh, I gotta see
cinematographer.
that, man. That's crazy.
But I mean, it's so like, yeah, there are elements to what was shot in film in 87 with that equipment. There are elements, but it's a pretty damn good approximation and just shows you the talent of someone who knows what they're doing behind the camera can do in the story they're telling. And that's not even, at this level where a lot of times the people who are like Robert Rodriguez, who are holding the camera while they're also directing, and they had written, and they're wearing all the hats. But I think if you're gonna be if you're gonna be crazy and delusional about like this idea you have, then I think it you deserve to wear that many hats because you deserve that much stress. And then if the reward is that you weren't wrong, that your idea was good and that you did put all that stress on yourself, then it's like, well, good. Like you did get a lot of people to help you and they were also stressed, but like you put the most amount of stress on yourself. So if this works out, the reward is mostly on you. And if it doesn't, well, hopefully got most of the stress. You were the one that got covered in blood and sprayed in the face.
Well, there you have it, cats. Thank you, folks, for coming by. Thank you for being on the show. I can't stress to my audience enough. Make sure you check out Sweet Meats. Such an incredible, fun flick. I love it. I highly recommend it. Other than that, you heard him. The best possible profound thing that you could say is have a good story. That's more important than anything else across the board. Other than that, guys, thank you so much, and I can't appreciate you enough for coming by. And I'll be sure to make sure I put up those links you mentioned, and everyone's gonna go out and see Sweet Meats, and we're gonna keep an eye on what you're doing next there. Other than that, thank you so much, Ricky, and thank you, Riley, and thank you so much, guys. Peace and love.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.